What's going on, everybody? It's your man, Doug Smith, alongside Will Lowry, welcoming you to Beyond the Fairway, Golf Channel's newest weekly podcast.
Not only are we asking you to listen to us, but we want you to hear us wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Circling the Bases podcast, the official podcast of NBC Sports Edge. Joining me on the show today is a very special guest over from Fangraphs, Mr. Paul Sporer. You may know him over on Twitch, playing MLB The Show constantly. He's everywhere. He's a great mind when it comes to pitching also, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
So how are you enjoying the early 2021 season so far? A lot of people were trying to throw out data from a 3-month season last year, 3-month season last year, but now all of a sudden everyone wants to jump off a bridge based on 3 weeks of data.
I know it's a lot, and I think it's just kind of getting back used to the fact that we're in a 6-month season again, and that it is different, and that you can't react. It's kind of easy, it's crazy how quickly we got conditioned to the 2-month season, and because now you're seeing the overreactions. I think everyone's excited to kind of have it back on its daily basis, starting in April, the way a normal year does, and that feels great. So I think people will start to calm down, but there is a bit, it can get a bit much in certain avenues of like just trying to call everything. It's like there's still so much time. So many things are going to change so drastically. Every single year it happens, and we never learn to like relax. It's because we all want to be right on predicting the breakouts. That's the problem. It's like a rush to be like, no, I called that. As soon as I saw that breakout, I said it was good. It's like, who cares though? Like,
yeah, who cares?
That you got wrong. Like we have to analyze. We have to do work. We're all out here trying to work and give people things to look at and how to analyze their teams. But a lot of it can't be super actionable or like, saying this player's now a superstar. This player's a dud. Just so much will change. But anyway, I don't need to keep rambling on about that. I just want people to know that nothing's right, nothing's wrong yet, and just keep managing your team day by day.
I get the enthusiasm. I put out a tweet like a week ago, then, everyone takes out of context because it's Twitter. You take the good with the bad. Yeah. I basically just said the player evaluation you had at the end of spring training pretty much shouldn't have changed today unless there was a change in circumstance, either injury or playing time, which I know you have to react to breakouts as far as FAB.
But what was really the reaction, or what? Yeah.
Well, this is more for people like who wants to drop people. In terms of, if Michael Conforto is off to a slow start, Marcell Ozuna is off to a slow start, should I drop him for Tyler Naquin? No, you should
obviously not.
But it's interesting.
I've always liked, it's just kind of an easy way to do it. Corey Schwartz, they had, what was it called? Fantasy 411. He and Mike Ciano talk about basically 26 week season. And we have like a 24-man roster. Easy way to just kind of do the things is kind of work inversely, right? Yeah. By week 2, you can cut your bottom 3 players generally, right? Things can change, but you should really be focusing on not cutting anybody in the upper 2/3 of your draft, I would say, unless they've suffered a catastrophic injury. So you work down there, and then you kind of work your way into the middle as the season goes if those guys start failing. But like for the most part, like a top 3-4 round pick, if they just have a bad season but they play all year, you should probably have that on your team the whole, like, based on what we know about stats and how things work with established star players, you should probably have kept them on your team the entire year. There's not like a good jump off point for players like that.
Yeah, I think some people will cut a player for someone not realizing that the expected value of the return player is still not as good as the other player struggling over the long term.
Yeah.
That's
plus
interesting.
The chance that they rebound.
Yeah, the chance they rebound. Exactly.
You have to keep that chance pretty high for a while. But anyway, I know we got plenty to talk about, so let's dive into the more pertinent stuff.
Before we get started here, just a quick shout out to the listeners. If you want to get into all the premium data on NBC Sports over on NBC Sports Edge, use promo code BASES10 for all the premium content, DFS betting. It's not just for MLB. You can use it for NFL, NBA, everything. So go over to NBC Sports Edge, use the promo code BASES10 for 10% off all premium content. It can be monthly, it can be yearly, it can be the entire thing. And definitely go to the App Store, download the new NBC Sports Edge app. The old Roto-World app you loved We've perfected it, changed it over to NBC Sports Edge. If you want all your news pushed your favorite players to your phone, it's absolutely amazing. Go download it, and it's free. So getting into it, I figured we'd start with a topic that no one else is going to be covering. So how about we talk about Madison Bumgarner's no-hitter?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? Let's just not. Everyone knows what it is. 7-inning no-hitter. Do you think it should be called a no-hitter before we actually get into the fact of Madison Bumgarner, whether he's interesting now?
I don't have a problem with it because it'll always be discussed in the context of what it was. Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to confuse it for a 9-inning no-hitter. So it'll be built into any discussion about it that it was not all 9 innings. It'll be in the records that is the case as well. So what's the problem? Like if they don't, I'm not going to raise a stink and be like, they have to count it. But if they do, I'm also not raising any sort of stink. I'm kind of ambivalent toward it, but I really do think that it could count. And the problem won't be nobody's going to know that it was only 7 innings. Like, yeah, we will. We'll be good.
It will be fine. Someone asked me and I said, do I think it should count? I said no, but I also said I don't care. The only thing I cared about was, they should have had this figured out before the season started.
Sure.
Because I feel bad for Madison Bumgarner in the sense that if it does count, because I guess they're meeting to figure out if it counts.
Yeah.
He kind of got robbed out of his celebration.
I mean, they mobbed him and everything, but I will say one thing I do like about him, and I don't want to say one thing as if I don't like anything else, but he can be kind of a clown with like barking at players and whatnot. I'm not a huge fan of him doing that. But one thing I think I would like, this is how I believe he would be, is he wants the 9-inning one. I don't think he wants to overly celebrate a 7-inning one. Now I might be projecting on him, but that's the vibe I get from Madison Bumgarner, is that if it's not a 9-inning one, he's probably not going crazy anyway.
He gave an interview after the game in which he actually said, thank you, Rob Manfred, for the 7-inning doubleheader. So he kind of threw that shade right at Manfred.
So and he's like,
he's more like, thank you for the drama too. Like now people got to keep asking me this. Like, I want the 9 innings. But
he knows what it is. And like, he'd have definitely gone out for the 8th. Now I'll ask you this. What if he goes out for the 8th and he gets up like 25 pitches? So he'd have been at 123. Say you walked a guy in there because it wasn't a perfecto. There was an error that kept it from being a perfect. So say he walks the guy, so there's another base run around, but he gets out of it. For the most part, he's fine. There are a few foul balls, and then the walk builds the pitch count, 25 pitches, $123. He has to come out though, right? He has to come out for the 9th though, right?
Yeah, I think there's also
he'd fight. I think he'd fight the manager if he wasn't allowed.
One, I think he'd fight too, and then 2, I think there's a line of how good a team is. I know it's early, everyone's in it, but this would be the highlight of their season.
Yeah.
So I think they would have fought for that.
And I think again, a veteran like that, because here's the thing too, we act like 100's a magic number. It's not. Not everyone feels the same way at pitch 100. It's Madison. Like the way his mechanics work, they don't put a ton of stress on him. I know he's had some injuries, but like, I don't know. I don't think there's any way he wouldn't come out for the 9th. So, I don't think he's going to over celebrate it. He's going to say it is what it is and be done with it.
Fabs tonight, the show will come out tomorrow morning. So, sorry.
That's what I'm curious about.
There's some overreactions here. Well, would you put in a speculative bid? Is this something where like, all right, maybe Mason Saunders has turned the corner. He's maybe a certain amount of time away from all of his pain. It feels like it was just like, a veteran kind of pulling one more rabbit out of a hat kind of situation. Like, how would you feel in like a 12-team mixed league with Madison Bumgarner?
I would probably go light. I might make a cursory bid. I will say this. When he had his velo at the very beginning of spring, I kind of threw out like, hey, I'm just going to keep an eye on him because he could generate innings. He's a known commodity. I think we can expect him to be, a high 3s guy, which has value in a lot of the leagues I play. I play leagues that are a little bit deeper. They're not inherently better, but they require a lower threshold to roster somebody. And I would have thought that. So yeah, I'll put in a little something if I need a pitcher, but he won't be my top guy. Like I still think I would go for Alex Wood over him, a guy we're going to talk about in a moment, Ryan Weathers. Who else is kind of hot this week? How about someone interesting that has been dropped a bunch? He didn't look good today. Drew Smiley
in the same doubleheader. He has the injury concerns. A lot of people liked him as a sleeper in the offseason. He's coming off forearm tightness. If he were available with Bumgarner, would you be interested in Smiley, or would you rather go with Bumgarner, who's actually seems like a safer bet, ironically?
Yeah, they'd be about the same bid area, but I would have a few extra bucks on the Bumgarner bid. Like I said, I had a little this, by the way, I'm not saying this to be like, hey, I kind of called this no hitter in a roundabout way. I'm just saying, I'm just kind of giving my path to how I have felt about Bumgarner this year. He was kind of like an automatic out. Then he had a little velo, and I said, just keep an eye on him. I only got him in one league. I'd already cut him, by the way. And, I could get him back in a 12 or 15 if I need a pitcher. He's probably third on the list right now, though, behind Wood and then Weathers. As two I can think off the top of my head. There's not a lot of great talent out there for 15 teamers this week. So yeah, he's Bumgarner's someone to look at. And obviously people have already bid, and if they want him, we'll see how it goes. It's going to be up and down and probably like a low 4s ERA by the end of the year.
And the bottom line is, it'd be great if he somehow is even halfway back. That would be good. Yeah. So let's run through some more of the weekend recap before we get to the rest of the pitchers we just mentioned. There's just a couple of hitters. Number one is Fernando Tatis Jr., which, man, I got to say, I mean, the people victory lapping either way is still weird. I was of the opinion when he came back, I felt uncomfortable with it just because I didn't want to see him get hurt. He's on my Twitter banner. I love this kid. And he's doing this two-handed swing now. He's just belting the ball as hard as ever. We have him down for the weekend batting 500 with 4 home runs. He's already hit another one tonight.
He's gone yard on Sunday. Yeah,
5 home runs. Trolling Trevor Bauer every chance he gets. Amazing. We don't have to talk about how great Fernando Tatis is, but are you worried about the shoulder? I mean, he's as hot as possible. And if you were worried at all about him lasting throughout the entire season, not only could you trade him, but you could trade him for no discount whatsoever. I mean, you could trade him for an immense amount. Would you be holding because he is Fernando Tatis Jr.? Or is there any worry about that shoulder?
I mean, I don't know. I feel like a challenge trade would probably look pretty suspicious, though. A 1-for-1 first rounder. They're like, well, you're clearly just trying to get out from the shoulder. Am I going to really give you Mookie Betts? I don't know, So I would probably hold if I bought him. I think I'm holding. I understand having a little bit of concern about how quickly he came back just because you don't want him to get hurt. But at some level, we have to trust the team, right? They couldn't be more invested in him if they tried.
I'm a Mets fan, so it's hard for me to trust the team.
I mean,
but I get where you're coming from. Yeah.
All you can do is trust that they're putting him out there, hoping that that he is ready to go to the best of their ability. You can never guarantee that there won't be a re-injury. So I think that they were doing the best that they could. It's come back and he's been excellent. I don't think I'd trade him though. I think it'd be looking too suspicious to people. They'd be like, why do you just want to do a 1-for-1? If you could somehow package it in a 2-for-2 where it doesn't look so, obvious that you're just trying to get out from under the shoulder issue, maybe, but I'm probably riding it out. Yeah, there's risk, but he's just so electric that unless I can actually get first round for first round, I wouldn't trade him. I wouldn't give any sort of discount.
All right, another hitter who had a nice weekend, Rhys Hoskins, 444, 3 home runs, 6 RBIs. It's good to see him back. It was in Coors Field, so I mean,
it's the place to do it.
Yeah, it's a good place to get heated up. But on base percentage leagues, he's always going to be solid. But in just regular 12-team leagues or so, there's a lot of guys that are struggling, like Josh Bell and so forth. Like Rhys Hoskins, is he someone that you think is going to be back for a monster season? Because everyone keeps kind of waiting for it, and everyone's keeps kind of projecting these 40 home run seasons on him where he hasn't actually achieved it yet. Do you think that he has maybe a career year coming?
I think he certainly has the capability for it. I've been in that camp that sees the profile in front of us with that power and thinks that he can really hit something in the 40s with his home run total. And, health and then performance have been kind of a mix there. Even in 19, he played the full year, but he seemed to kind of have some nagging injuries that he played through. He did kind of find the point where you can hit too many fly balls, and he needs to kind of make sure that he doesn't venture into that mid 50s realm. And guess what? He's down to 43%. So it looks like they've talked to him as well, or he's learned on his own. 50% is a little too high for my fly ball rate. It needs to be in those 40s there. Mix in some more line drives, mix in some more ground balls. Even when they're well struck, they go for base hits. And I think we could be seeing a huge season from him. He is striking out a bit without the walks, but I think the walks will still be there. and he can even bring the strikeout rate back down because he's a career 24%, currently at 35. Meanwhile, his walk rate is down to just 5%, and he's usually at 15. But he's hitting so well that maybe he's just attacking, and we'll see what happens when pitchers start to change against him, and then he'll say, maybe I got to peel back and start walking a bit more.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of things changing with him the last couple of years too. 2019, the second half, they changed him from this like kind of pull monster that he's always been, where he gets his power. And the batting coach tried to, or the hitting coach tried to make him to go to like all fields and do something he wasn't comfortable with. They ended up firing him. Then he came in last year with a new swing, a new stance. So there's been a lot of moving parts with him as well. He's trying to find it. So if maybe he just finally found his comfort zone as well. Next hitter, we don't got to talk about much, but it's hilarious to me. Rougned Odor goes from like zero value to, he batted cleanup.
I know,
for the Yankees today in front of Gleyber Torres, in front of the rest of the group. So he's 286 with a couple of home runs over the weekend. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, he has to be picked up, right? There's always a spot on your bench, I would assume, to at least see. Like, let's see.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really not a fan of the player profile. It's just so bad. But yeah, you do have to kind of see, because even in some of these bad years, yeah, you got the stadium, you got power and a little speed. He throws in some chip in as well, and so it's like I get it. I get it why you would have to at least take a gander. If you needed a hitter, especially, and you needed some punch, but be careful. It can really, really go sideways. He is definitely known for somebody who can really just completely fall off and not be any good. But yeah, you do have to take a look if you need a hitter.
I mean, powered speed always plays. I think I don't know if he's more intriguing this year because like the league-wide batting average is 230, but I'm thinking the league-wide batting average is 230, so bad hitters are probably going to be even worse.
Well, he is too. He's 175 so far for the year with the 3 homers.
So you get what you get. Adolis Garcia, 333, 2 home runs, 4 RBIs. The big question here is, I guess, do you believe in him? And 2, the Cardinals need to stop trading outfielders.
I was going to say, anybody really, hitters, because Luke Voit, first baseman that they moved on, and they have Paul Goldschmidt, so it's not like it's the end of the world. But yeah, like look what we're seeing here. He's kind of intriguing in that I feel like he's going to get an opportunity to play a good bit. He does strike out too much, doesn't have a very good walk rate to kind of offset it. So I think there's going to be a lot of volatility with the ability to go on these hot and cold streaks. The cold streaks are going to be really bad. He strikes me as somebody that is going to be cut and repicked up throughout the year, Adolis Garcia. I don't think he's necessarily somebody that sticks even in 15-teamers right now, but he's going to catch fire a few different times to where he's going to be a flavor of the particular week. So right now is one of those. You can definitely look at him. He's playing a lot. He's got 5 homers. I think he does need to be looked at, but understand that it's short term and bid accordingly.
It's sad for like the Victor Robles shareholders that are really have to sit through what's going on with him, when you could cycle through guys like Garcia and Odor and probably end up with the same production.
True.
Going over to the pitchers, the most interesting guy for me, hair pulling out, is Robbie Ray. We've seen this show before where he's kind of displayed. He did it early on last year, right? When he kind of went in with the new mechanics. 6 innings, 6 hits, 3 earned, 0 walks, which isn't like perfect, but still 9 strikeouts, 0 walks being the most important thing for Robbie Ray. Are you a Robbie Ray guy, or a stay away from Robbie Ray? I've been bitten too many times.
I haven't even been bitten because I don't get close enough. No, thank you. I can't do it. I mean, we know what we're getting here, and you're already missing some of the goodness. So now you're going to pick him up for what? The regression back, and then you're going to cut him and he's going to go off again. Like this is the kind of player you can get whipsawed on so badly, where you just keep mistiming it. And because his highs can look so good because they're appealing with the strikeout rate. So you feel like I got to jump in. I'm out. No, thank you.
Kevin Gausman went 8 innings, 1 earned, 11 strikeouts. He was someone I wasn't excited in drafting this season, only because his ADP kind of got to a point where if he didn't achieve what you were hoping for, it looked like the bottom might fall out. But at this point, he is actually overproducing what you paid. I was worried about the short season. The velocity was up, and I was thinking, he's a free agent coming into the end of the year. Maybe he's ramping this thing up for a little bit to see what he can get. But I mean, so far so good. The splitter and everything is working. Kevin Gausman, it's hard not to believe in him. I wouldn't be looking to like acquire him or anything, but you're not going to be getting him at a discount regardless.
Yeah, no, I think you're dead on there with the fact that the price definitely got to a point where it was like, okay, you're paying, and if he doesn't deliver, it's a little bit of a failure. It didn't carry that upside that he has in the past years based on the cheap price, but he still had upside. It was just kind of different now. The expectations were changing. If you weren't bought in on those, I understand. But those that were his big believers, it's paying off nicely, and he looks good again in San Francisco. I really like him, and I definitely think he can have another strong year. I don't think it was just made based on the park, because I don't know. You're familiar with the little architectural change that they had last year that kind of changed the way the park was playing with no fans with that gate. So I don't think it was just based off of that. I think that he can still be successful in San Francisco, regardless of how that gate is playing. I think the park itself helps him, not so much the structure with the gate.
Skipping over one name on our list, we'll go back to him. Pablo Lopez, just because he was going in the same area as Gausman in most drafts, 6 innings, 1 earned, 7 strikeouts. He seems to be just improving year over year. He really nice guy too. If anyone's ever like watched him be interviewed or talked to him. One, is he who's the best pitcher on that team right now? Because I know Trevor Rogers is looking like well above and beyond what even the people that were invested were hoping he would be. But Pablo Lopez so far and the rest of the Miami rotation real quick.
Big fan of the baby fish. Was in on several of them, trying to get them wherever I could. Trevor Rogers, Pablo Lopez. Sandy Alcantara is probably the order I'd have it right now. I think Rogers is ahead of Lopez. Obviously, Lopez has a little bit more of a foundation to work off of, though, and I think that's something that kind of gives you the more confidence in him if you're going to go out and buy either of these guys and buy high. Because, I don't think you're going to get a 2.93 ERA the rest of the year or a 1.64 ERA from that Lopez 2.93, Rogers 1.64. But I think you can expect something in like the mid-threes the rest of the way, and that's a pretty good expectation to buy a guy. Basically, anybody that isn't an ace that can be like 350 and below and not cost you ace prices, that's quite good. And so I think that's the kind of range that you can expect from those guys with big strikeouts. I do favor Lopez over Rogers the rest of the way, but Rogers right now is definitely pitching better pitch for pitch, though it's close.
Trevor Bauer, 6 innings, 2 earned, 9 strikeouts. After a little bit of a hiccup in the back end of a near no-hitter in Coors Field, where that's where most of the damage came against him this year. He has looked, he's looked as advertised, or at least as you was a hope if you were a believer. I am not going to stand out and said I believed in him. I did not. I was one of the people that looked at the shortened season, at the playing only in the NL Central, all the metrics, and I thought, another similar to Gausman. I wasn't comfortable paying the price for where he was going. But I mean, at this point, it looks like he is going to be worth it with a lot of people like Luis Castillo, Nola slipping in this similar area. So Trevor Bauer, do you just expect him to be in the NL Cy Young hunt the entire year? Or because I guess in the beginning he had a little bit of an early stretch of easy games, but I mean, he's taken on the Padres, and any kind of worry like that seems to be out the window.
Yeah, he seems to have truly arrived. What my issue with him wasn't so much based on the shortened season. It was rather the tinker nature that he has of just kind of going in and fixing what even isn't broken. We saw it coming off of the big 2018 season. He went right back to being a mid-fours guy in 2019. Comes out last year, he was excellent. I also had a little bit of concern about the whole sticky stuff conversation, because obviously he's using something, he told on himself, ahead of time by saying you can't get X number of spin rate without using something. And then he has that type of gain. It's like, well, okay. And I don't begrudge him that, by the way. That is kind of an everyone's doing it sort of thing. I'm not going to sit there and not do it. I absolutely would. And then they talk about the crackdown. I figured it was toothless, but there was a little bit of concern that just added to it. I only ended up with Bauer in one league where I thought I was kind of just making sure that the auction got to 30 so that, so he was going to go 30 something, and they froze it there at 30. And I was like, that's fine by me. I'll take him for $30. So that's the only spot that I got. Bauer was actually in an auction.
I'm wondering, as obviously the only reported ball that's been taken out of play so far has been Bauer's. And no, that wasn't the only ball, everyone that was taken out. It's the only one that was reported because it was leaked, and or that's the one everyone's interested in. Another person where a lot of names aren't being thrown out, Garrett Cole is a name that everyone kind of knows might be involved. But if you looked at spin rates, there was names like Brandon Woodruff, they're on there. And Luis Castillo. I mean, Is he the only one who's afraid? Maybe he stopped using stuff because for the love
Sheesh.
of everything, I am looking into him. All the metrics look good. O-swing, swinging strike rate, Z contact, everything actually looks solid other than the slight drop in velocity, which his max, he's been hitting his average from last year. So his velocity has been climbing, but oh man, what is wrong with Luis Castillo?
I do not know. And it's definitely something I want to take a deeper look at. But on the surface, I've seen the same things that you have with regards to most things being in line to still be successful. Yeah, swinging strike rate's down, but it's not down precipitously to where his strikeout rate should be nearly cut in half from what his established level has been. At least he's still not walking guys, but he's in the zone, but with very hittable pitches. The hits and homers are through the roof. It does on the surface, just kind of diagnosing it as a whole profile. Luis Castillo's issues look fixable because we've heard nothing about injury. And so
I've heard some people suggest tipping pitches, but that's not something I have seen, but that's something I've seen suggested.
I haven't seen anything like I haven't seen it to where I could pick it up. But if that's what I'm saying, that's something that would absolutely be correctable and that could get him completely back on track. And that explains why there's still like some tinge of success to what he's doing here because he's still getting some guys out, maybe the guys who can't read the tip very well, or, you can know it's coming and still miss it, especially when it's coming at 99 miles an hour or with his nasty changeup. So I think that really does kind of highlight like, okay, that's why he's not just getting completely pummeled every single time out. I would still buy here because I do think you can actually foster a legitimate discount. And that's when you go in and say, okay, you're not going to take him to the cleaners and get it like for a 20th rounder. But I think he gets something. What was he, like a third rounder, Luis Castillo was?
And a second.
I think he can give something in the 6 to 10 range, depending on who it is, and get away with it. And I would do that.
Brady Singer, we're going to talk a little bit about called strikes. We're running a little long here, but we want to talk about called strikes in a bit. 7 innings, 1 earned, 8 strikeouts. He's someone who actually lives on called strikes. So he is a CSW leader, but again, he's off to a very fast start. He was a popular kind of back end. I don't want to say sleeper. Everyone throws that term around, but back end.
I think
pitcher,
he would actually qualify though.
Yeah,
because he's actually, he is a little bit off the radar and everything.
Yeah,
you're right.
When you're projecting someone to jump into that, top tier, right, or next tier.
Yeah.
So Brady Singer, are you in? I mean, I like what I see.
Yeah, I do too. I really do. I was really impressed with the fact that the Royals brought him and Bubic up last year, gave them an opportunity. Obviously, they didn't see that. They knew what their lot was in the division, that they weren't really going to be contenders, but they still let those pitchers come up and start to show some stuff at the major league level. And I think that's really going to pay dividends going forward here. So I like what Singer's able to do. I watched him a bunch because he's faced the Tigers. So I kind of end up watching, those starts being a Tigers fan. And I think there's something legitimate here. And I agree with the folks that were picking him as a breakout or a sleeper or however you want to term it. But I thought that there was some upside there with Singer.
Indeed is the job site that makes hiring as easy as 1, 2, 3. Post, screen, and interview, all on Indeed. Get your quality shortlist of candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description faster. Only pay for the candidates that meet must-have qualifications. And schedule and complete video interviews in your Indeed dashboard. With tools like Indeed Instant Match, giving you quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed fit your job description immediately. And Indeed skills tests that on average reduces hiring time by 27%. According to Talent Nest, Indeed delivers 4 times more hires than all other job sites combined. If you're hiring, you need Indeed. Get started right now with a free $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/NBC podcasts. Indeed.com/NBC podcasts. Offer valid through June 30th. Terms and conditions apply.
Maybe not Brad Keller as much, but Brady Singer, you guys at the Kansas City, you nailed it. Ryan Weathers, someone who went really under the radar in terms of hype and fab bids. I mean, Adrian Morjan is already down. It looks like, Dinelson Lamet, we'll see. I mean, I don't know what this is. I know you said trust the team. This is obviously a separate situation. This seems like the Monty Python skit. It's just tis but a scratch. I don't know what's to expect from Lamet, but it's not anything to scare me off Weathers. And they say Mackenzie Gore is the yips. going on 2 years
no.
now, they're saying. So
that explains it. I actually hadn't seen that bit of news. That
Yeah.
explains why he couldn't get a sniff.
So hopefully it's not a Rick Ankiel situation and he can lock that down. But Ryan Weathers, 5 2/3, 1 earned, 5 strikeouts, 0.59 ERA in WHIP on the year because he worked in the bullpen. He looks every bit legitimate so far. I mean, you can't expect the results we've seen to date, but he looks like he's going to have a role here with San Diego, at least a valuable enough one to roster immediately if he's still available.
Absolutely. And I think there are a good number of leagues where you can still get Ryan Weathers in. He was the forgotten prospect. He didn't quite rate as high as Patino, who's moved on in the Blake Snell deal. Morion, who you talked about, who's now hurt. Mackenzie Gore, who was the highest rated of the bunch, which I did not see that thing about the yips. That's unbelievable. And that's really, really tough. Even Michael Baez, I think, kind of rated higher than Weathers. So the one thing, though, is we always talk about their depth and how many prospects they have. Well, then we probably shouldn't have forgotten somebody just because he was a little bit lower. And Weathers has been a standout prospect, worthy of attention. And now he's showing why. And those that did like him and kind of bought in early are getting the dividends of it. He throws hard from the left side. He doesn't walk too many guys. I think he's got enough of an arsenal here to really stick around and be somebody who can go 5-6 innings regularly. It is a little Dinelson Lamet in that if either of the two pitches, because it's still a show me change, it will prevent him, I think, from going too deep into games. But if he can be a consistent five and dive for them, I think that's a huge addition for the Padres.
I love how you turn Dinelson Lamet into an adjective.
It's a little Lamet, because it's two pitches, right? But they're really good, and they're both looking great so far. But it's like, where's that day when one of them's off? Because it's coming, right? It happens to everybody. Yep. What does he do? Can the slider carry him if the fastball's off? Probably, but if that's off, then you're just going all fastballs, and that becomes a lot more difficult.
Similar with Yanoa down in Atlanta. He looked like he probably still should end up in the bullpen, but it'll come to the game where you're like, okay, can he bounce back? Can he make this work as a starter? And that's the test he's going through at the moment.
Yep.
The last pitcher we'll talk about very briefly is Jacob deGrom. 6 innings, 0 earned, 15 strikeouts. He's amazing. I know some were worried about the kind of ticky-tacky injuries, but I mean, when the Mets out of it, I don't necessarily sure how many are as worrisome as some made it out to be, only because I think 3 out of the 5, they said if they were competing, he would have pitched through them.
Yeah.
But I mean, he's great. I don't know what else to say.
He's just amazing. And I was going to say, I hope that this convinces the folks who won't draft a first round pitcher that it's a perfectly viable idea. But actually, I hope it doesn't convince them, because then it makes it easier for me to get first round pick, because I will take a first round pitcher. I don't think it's inherently more risky to an appreciable degree over a hitter. And I think that risk is mitigated by the fact that they're 1 of 9 versus 1 of 14. DeGrom is a god, very worthy of the number 1 overall pick if you want to go pitcher.
I'm probably incredibly wrong with what I'm about to say, but it feels like there's been more hitter injuries this year than pitchers. Again, it's probably 3-1 pitchers, but it feels like there's a lot of hitters.
High profile, you're definitely right. Because that's a little bit more anecdotal. And what's the cutoff for high profile? Yeah, I would bet on that. Overall, you're probably right that it's the other way, that we are overrating it. But from the high profile fantasy angle, it has to be hitters. Because who's even gotten hurt as a pitcher besides Strasburg, who we kind of expect to every year anyway, unfortunately.
Yeah, I honestly, I can't think of one off the top of my head other than Framber Valdez with the fingers.
Yeah, but that was before the season even.
Yeah, so before the season. So I mean, but those are
Gallen
really
got hurt and came back. So Gallen's almost like a plus on the side, because he came back early and he's been amazing. And I was nervous.
I'm stunned. He's been so amazing. He comes out in his very first game throwing curveballs immediately as hard as he can. It's fantastic.
I was happy to be wrong on that one, because I love watching him pitch. I'd already had him in a league from before the injury, which I was obviously super nervous about. I couldn't pull the trigger in drafts, even though the discount was a pretty fair risk. He was ranging 8 to 12 round, depending on the risk assessment of your league. The 8, obviously you needed something, but 12, you could take more of a toss up there. But I just couldn't pull the trigger on the Gallen when he was hurt. But he looks amazing. He almost had a no-no today. He could have had a 7-inning no-no of his own. By the way, how bad were the Braves today? Did they just go out and get lit last night? They got one hit in 14 innings, Matt.
Yeah, and it's not like you're getting like straight gas or anything.
No.
Yeah, this isn't the it was an
Gallon doesn't even
embarrassing setup.
throw that hard. Like the power's not his number one thing. And then Bumgarner, of course, he's finesse all the way. And they got one hit. That tells me they had an awesome party on Saturday.
Now, it's interesting you said the thing about Gallen. You're happy to be wrong. I said the thing earlier in the show when Tatis hadn't come back yet and hit these 5 home runs with the two-handed swing. I loved Fernando Tatis, and I said while I was worried and would have traded him. Anyone who wants to throw it, I told you so. Bring it. I don't care. I'm happy to be wrong.
Oh yeah,
couldn't be more excited about it.
Sometimes you make a call because that's what you're assessing everything, and that's where you're at with it, and you can't really you don't want to go against what your brain's telling you just because you like a player, but then you still say, if this one's wrong, that'd be great because I don't want to be right. I don't want this player to be out of the league, not performing and delivering the joy that he does. I mean, Fernando Tatis is so freaking fun to watch. It's unbelievable.
So like the actual point of the show is supposed to be this segment, but we're running real long. So we're going to talk about this for no. Hey, it happens.
It always happens with me though. I am the longest winded person in the world and I'm so sorry.
No, it's good. We had a lot of good information here, but so we'll talk about it quick for like 5 minutes. Called strikes. I had an article by the numbers I did for NBC Sports when I broke down just the league leaders in called strikes. And I wanted to look into not just the pitchers on how they were getting called strikes, whether it was skill or it was, what it was a little bit of luck. But I looked into like, if you go into StatCast, they don't break down pitches into in zone and out of zone, 2 zones. They break it into 4. The heart of the plate, the shadow, which is the inner part, the outer part of the strike zone, and then the, outside of the strike zone, kind of the, just the inside and outside of edge, and then the chase zone, and then the waist. So I wanted to see who was leading the league in those ones in the shadow, just on the corners to see, who was just had the pinpoint command, whose catcher was framing the best. And I just kind of wanted to see who was up there and kind of year by year. And the names you see at the very top are, some people you would expect, at least year over year. You see names like Trevor Bauer. You see seems like Michael Pineda is always known for his command, but someone we had talked about before, Brady Singer's up on here. Lance McCullers has been up here a couple of times. So just in general, what are your thoughts on pitchers that lean really hard into called strikes for part of their strikeout rate? Does that worry you at all in player analysis and drafting them year to year? Is this just in general, before we kind of just get into what it takes to get called strikes? Is this a skill that you look by individual, or is it something that worries you that you look into specifically when you look at strikeout rates?
No, it's something that I kind of started to learn more about few years ago when Aaron Nola was breaking on the scene, and I'd been doing research and saw how high his called strike rate was. And I remember my analysis from that was that it made his strikeout rate a little bit fraudulent, and that I was worried about it because the stickiness of called strikes from the data that we had to that point was not particularly high. From other research, I hadn't run any reports myself, but again, going through other articles and kind of seeing what the research had been on that, that's what they had come to. And so I was like, well, the way this adds up doesn't really look good. Well, then we kind of learned that Nola is one of the outliers. He's somebody who does have some stickiness based on his arsenal and the way he pitches that can get regular called strikes. And I guess the real bottom line of it is that you just have to be willing to kind of do the analysis and figure out who are the guys that can actually do this as a bit of a skill versus the ones who are inconsistent with it and do maybe have more luck based to it. And so I think it just becomes part of a player profile that like the stats aren't going to capture, and like maybe FIP or whatever ERA indicator you like isn't going to necessarily like them because of it, if that component is built in. But they're outliers, right? We learn there's guys like this all the time. Kyle Hendricks is different from like any pitcher, but he's still really good in fantasy. I remember Matt Cain for years baffled all the projection systems. Maybe there are just guys like that, and called strikes is their avenue toward that success. And
I mean, obviously the easiest way to break this down from an analytical standpoint, if you're trying to project forward, is track record. But that is, that is only limited to a certain amount of players. If you look at the leaderboards for the last couple of years, you'll see Rich Hill, Brady Singer in limited time last year did it. He's doing it again this year. So it's not a long track record, but still Michael Pineda, Charlie Morton, Lance McCullers, Steven Strasburg, Yu Darvish. There's a lot of names that always pop up. So you can look at track record and point to that as, okay, we think this is legitimate. But if you're trying to point to the new guys on the list this year, like David Peterson, Tyler Mahle, Dane Dunning, Austin Gomber, guys that are getting calls like that, do you think it almost requires video, like actually kind of watching? Because you can go into the pitch mix and you can look at their charts and everything. I look into, the catching, the runs from extra strikes and strike rate for the catchers, which, Martin Aldonado, they love him down in Houston and signed him to an extension. If people want to know why, if you look at his bat, I mean, there's all the Astro pitchers at the top of this list in called strikes, and Martin Maldonado is I don't want to say, the chief reason, but he certainly is helping.
Big reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, he's a big reason behind it, and that is a huge factor too. So that's another aspect to look at is a pitcher's catcher and how much he's playing an influence on it, which we do have better numbers on framing than we've ever had. They seem to improve year over year. So that's just another piece of analysis that you can use to kind of figure out who can benefit from it this year and maybe see a surge, especially like a team changer, somebody who goes from a terrible framer to a good one, and they could be adding to their called strike rate. That could be like a strikeout breakout player, something like that. So there's so many factors that there's no one size fits all answer, but that's kind of the fun of the research and where you can gain an edge, right? It's hard to gain an edge these days in the information age, but these small venues are where you can definitely do it. Or avenues, I should say.
That's why I think that's why it was fascinating to look at, because there's so many different things. I mean, even someone obvious like Corbin Burns, he started throwing his cutter as his chief pitch rather than his sinker this year. And before he didn't, he leaned on that slider and he couldn't command anything. All of a sudden he's throwing his cutter, which he commands really well. Well, he commands much better than his other offerings. Omar Narvaez was the top of the league.
He's been taught.
Yeah, he's been top of the league before. He's doing well again this season. It's just he's just someone who helps along with Brandon Woodruff. So yeah, it's an interesting topic called strikes, and there's a lot into it. And we didn't even talk about umpires yet, which we were talking a little bit before the show. It's difficult because we were saying there's not a place where you can actually see data tabulated, but there's certain umpires that have a reputation for having a wide zone or a tight zone that is a big part. I think you're mentioning DFS. It should be a major tool for DFS that's kind of underutilized.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the umpire effects are so huge, and pros that do the DFS, they're on it, and that's a big thing that they have over the general populace as far as playing DFS. That is a factor, and you wonder how they get to a certain pitcher. Like, why would they pick him? Because he's this much percentage higher on called strikes for sliders, and this dude throws 42% sliders, so he got 9 strikeouts tonight. Stuff like that, and I do think the umpire is such an important bit of information that we just do not have great access to. Sometimes we don't even know who is going to be behind the dish in a given game, especially at the beginning of a series. It can be difficult to find. So that's still kind of a frontier that has some road to be traversed on it to catch everybody up. Because right now it's kind of a hidden thing.
One pitcher to give an example real quick to everyone who, if you want to look into someone's called strikes to see if they're legitimate, you're a Tigers fan. So about Matthew Boyd, he has a CSW 30.4%, which is the best arc of his career when I wrote the article. That's why I have the data in front of me, because it's a lot of different things. I mean, his slider performed poorly like last season, which would kind of show you why maybe he had a massive dip, but he had a 39.4% whiff rate in 2020, and he has an 18.6 mark this season on it. But he has a massive bump in his CSW from called strikes. His previous career high was 11.8 in the 11. Sorry, his previous career high was, I'm not sure I have it right here. He's currently holding a 21.5% called strike rate from the 30.4% CSW. So 21.5 of that is coming from called strikes. And 11.8 of that is coming from the shadow, which is well above his career best as well. So that's someone where I'm looking at early success, and I have a little bit of a red flag just because I see he's off to a great start, but it not necessarily like the slider's not working back to normal. He's just getting an immense amount of called strikes. So it's just he's an interesting guy to dig into for this. Yeah,
he's not getting his swings and misses at the same clip. I agree that it's been a little suspect for me as well, including the like this high slider that he's working feels a little dangerous. I know his home run rate's down and everything, and I want to be excited. I'm a Boyd boy after all, but it's a little bit nerve wracking. And I completely understand why you would have a little bit of caution there, because it's not all quite adding up yet for him. So, if you bought him, he was so cheap that it's not something that you have to necessarily get off board before it implodes, but just be careful with him. I'd still spot Matt Boyd. I'd still be smart about him, and I'd still be ready to jump off board if it starts to hit the bumpy road quickly.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't trying to scare anyone off Matt Boyd.
Yeah.
It was more, he's a good example of a pitcher you're trying to figure out that you can kind of dig into called strikes. And I thought he was he seems like a nice example, someone who's performing well, that the called strikes are a big part of it. And he's someone that, if anyone wants to have fun with this, check it out on your own. Watch Matt Boyd pitch and just see how he's getting his results. And he's an interesting subject. So
yep.
That'll kind of wrap up the show. Went a little bit long, but I thought everything we covered was really good. Paul, thank you for joining me on the show. I can't imagine anyone's listening to the show doesn't know who you are, but I mean, plug your stuff real quick. I know everyone doesn't know about the great stuff you do on Twitch. So yeah, kind of tell everyone where they can find all your stuff.
Find me on Twitter, twitter.com/Spore, SPORER. Same on Twitch, twitch.tv/Spore. Streaming there 5, 6, sometimes 7 nights a week. Just doing baseball stuff. We play MLB The Show, Out of the Park Baseball. We do fantasy drafts. I did my main event draft there and a RotoWire online championship draft. All sorts of baseball stuff. So even if you don't play video games, you don't play MLB The Show, that's fine. We have plenty of folks in there who do not even have a console. They're just there to hang out, talk baseball. Twitch.tv/Spore, over at Fangraphs, fantasy.fangraphs.com. Doing articles and podcasts 5 days a week over there as well. So baseball is in full swing, and I couldn't be happier.
All right, everyone, you can follow me on Twitter at Matt Williams, METTWI77IMS. Check out my article every week by the numbers Tuesday afternoon. So thank you for listening. We'll be back tomorrow. Drew Silva will be back with Janice with their Power Rankings podcast. Remember, we're back with Circling the Bases 5 days a week now. See you, everybody.